if we go back to the basics and we begin to just have knowledge surrounding, one, what is mental health? Two, when did it become a mental illness, a disorder, a struggle, a challenge, whatever we want to call it.
Right.
We've got mental health. That's how I'm thinking, acting, and feeling, right?
Yeah.
Good mental health. And then when I began to struggle. And our programs focus on how I can notice the changes in someone's behavior when their mental health has become a struggle, a challenge, an illness.
The opinions expressed in the following program are those of the producer and not necessarily those of WKTV Community Media.
Hello, West Michigan. This is GRTV Media Business TV. My name is Pamela Keim, your host. The spirit of the show is to introduce West Michigan to all the businesses, nonprofits, individuals that can help us thrive in our lives. We have a very special guest for you today. We are going to be talking about mental health. Many of us have had the stigma of not talking about mental health, not bringing it up, but in today's climate, we really need to talk about it because many things are happening and suicide is up, and maybe we hear a lot about that with celebrities, maybe somebody that you know or been part of that have committed suicide. We want to welcome to the show today Christy Buck. She is the executive director of Mental Health Foundation of West Michigan and also the new author of Be Nice book. These are the 4 steps that help recognize mental health in people and how to help them seek help. So I want to welcome Christy Buck to the show today.
Great to be here.
And let's talk mental health.
You got it.
You know what? I think I will have to tell you, when I was reading the book, and we've been friends for a long time, I think it still is a stigma to talk about mental health. I know a lot of people that I've ran into that had a family member that have committed suicide. And of course, we know of the many celebrities over the years that have committed suicide. I want you to share why are we still unable to bring up mental health at our dinner table, to talk to our children, our friends, and to actually see the warning signs?
You got it. I am Christy Buck, the executive director of the Mental Health Foundation of West Michigan and the founder of Be Nice. And about 11 years ago, we created the program following a lot of education we were already doing in the community through another program that I helped create. But Be Nice was created in part to have conversations surrounding bullying, but ultimately that conversation really needed to be about an underlying issue, and that was when bullying is having an effect on someone's mental health. And so I think what our society has done is complicate what mental health is. And if we go back to the basics and we begin to just have knowledge surrounding, one, what is mental health? Two, when did it become a mental illness, a disorder, a struggle, a challenge, whatever we want to call it.
Right.
We've got mental health. That's how I'm thinking, acting, and feeling, right?
Yeah.
Good mental health. And then when I began to struggle. And our programs focus on how I can notice the changes in someone's behavior when their mental health has become a struggle, a challenge, an illness.
All right, we're going to talk about Be Nice because that's a whole segment we're going to be talking about because it's been around for about 10 years now, I will have to say. And you and I, coming from the city of Granville, raising our children, I believe it kind of started there.
We did begin our pilot program in the high school.
Okay, so you've been at the Mental Health Foundation of West Michigan for what, 35 years?
Yep.
You're the executive director. I know I've seen you back in the day giving out speeches. I basically want to start with adult mental illness. We hear it all the time. Everybody, it seems to be like almost if I say it, I've got an anxiety, I've got depression or whatever, but Share with us, what does that really look like, and are we using that word too much to describe the blues, a bad day?
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? That's what people are saying. It was like, it's almost like now it's like, I'm depressed. Is that a good way to start the conversation?
So one way is to, if somebody said, I'm depressed, then a follow-up question may be, how long have you been feeling this way? So how we teach it, and we like to instruct people to recognize a mental health disorder, depression, anxiety, would be to look at how their behaviors are, how they typically are, how they think, act, feel. And if I notice a change, or personally if I feel this change for 2 weeks or longer, and it's affecting me going to work or going to school, my daily activities, how I function, and how I engage in these satisfying relationships, then potentially that could be the onset of anxiety disorder, depression, the illness. So 2 weeks or longer is how you measure that this has been constant. I've been unable to get out of bed. I've been sad for 2 weeks. I've been crying for 2 weeks. I've been angry for 2 weeks. I'm drinking more. I'm doing these things for 2 weeks or longer. Could be that point. Maybe potentially, can I find someone to talk to?
Well, I think today, since COVID, all right, I hate to even use that word because it brings us back to, it's been 2 years, right? Okay, I know a lot of people that were struggling during COVID. Now, how do you, I would say depression, but seeing what was happening there, it was not like 9/11. It's not like a tragic thing happened, we came home, and I went to church. I met with my friends. I got together. That wasn't really the case in COVID. So how do you think that isolation and how that played out, and we're still playing it out, on that, how do you think that's been affecting people with mental health today?
Yeah, so one of the risk factors to develop a mental health disorder struggle challenge is stressful situations that are going on in our lives.
Out of our control.
They were out of our control. And so what happens then is many of us potentially, maybe some of us turned to friends. Maybe some of us turned to God.
The internet.
Maybe some of us turned to the internet. Maybe some of us found hobbies to re-engage myself. Maybe I found this as an opportunity to begin to exercise. Whatever, a lot of people were finding coping skills. That's what we call it.
Right.
To get them through those difficult times. And for a lot of people, I hear that was a time where I got to reconnect with family members. In fact, the suicide rate went down that year.
Why do you think that is?
People were around more people. We had to engage. We had to find a new way to meet with coworkers. We had to actually talk to people that we live with. We had to eat with the people we lived with. So suddenly, some of those protective factors, we call those, naturally, all of a sudden, they rose up. Kids weren't around friends that potentially were bringing about those angst feelings of peer pressure. Yes, they were inundated with a new way of thinking and learning, but parents now were also engaged. Now, coming out and returning, then a lot of angst started, and that was people losing their jobs, people's children now struggling with that necessity of going back to school, but things are going to be very, very different.
Right.
And then that angst can come about, including, obviously, the fear of the pandemic, the
unknown.
Rise in opinions, the rise in tumultuous America, and that also caused a lot of stress. So we know that stress has a direct relationship to our mental health. And when it's not kept in check, it can turn into struggles, challenges, illnesses.
All right, we are going to be talking about your book. It's recently come out, and it's the 4 steps of helping see people in a depression state or an anxiety. And then, of course, the steps, what to do. But I do know that you wrote it with Jeff Elhart.
Yep.
Right? And he serves on your board.
He sure does.
All right. I want to still stay on the topic of adult mental illness. I want you to share a little bit what inspired two of you to come together and write this book, which I found just fascinating. I did learn some things. I have interviewed in the past, interviewed you in the past, so I do know a lot about Be Nice. But I was a little bit taken back on some of the information that was in here on what to do and how to diagnose it. So you can share, who is Jeff Elhart and why did you write this book with him?
Yeah. So Jeff lost his brother, his best friend, to suicide back in 2015. And following his death by suicide, his family didn't understand the illness and didn't understand that potentially not understanding why his brother Wayne took his life. So they became educated. They became more knowledgeable on the illness called depression, and through a lot of different mechanisms and things. So when Jeff realized that his brother really had lost his life to an illness called depression, he decided that he would hold an event at his church in Holland to bring awareness. And so he called me and asked me if I wanted to be a display booth at the event. So they were going to bring together a panel of folks, and they were also going to bring about resources that are available to people. So it was taking place in Holland. So he called me and asked me this, and I said, I really would love to talk to you about the work that we do, because what we are an action plan. This program, Be Nice, and the Mental Health Foundation are about teaching, giving people the knowledge surrounding mental health, mental illness, having the confidence to take action. So he said, will you come out and meet with me? So I drove out to Holland. We probably were together for 3 hours. And within the first 30 minutes, after I heard Jeff's story, and Jeff had an acrostic with the word depression, thinking of a plan, he flipped out. Literally, we talked about it. I explained what nice means, and he fell in love with it. And he felt that that had a direct relationship to his brother also, who was just an incredibly nice person, but struggled with this illness. And if people would have worked through the plan, maybe his brother could have been saved.
Well, his brother started experiencing issues. I saw that in the book, which is that sometimes you are losing weight, gain weight, or whatever you want to call it, and all of a sudden it sounded like he had found some coping mechanisms and started to feel better, and then the family kind of took a step back. He looks like he's getting his life together, and then he spirals.
Yeah.
Is that common?
Sure, people can feel better. People can look at life. In his situation, I know that a lot of it had to do with, a lot of the financial situations that came in in 2010. And Wayne at that time decided he would retire. And,
yeah, he was excited about it.
Probably part of it maybe is, more in depth. There's a lot of depth that was probably going on in his mind with the feeling to retire. So he did that, and yeah, he was enjoying life. But then the summer before he did take his life, there were a lot of changes that came about that
he was really fearful of not having enough money to retirement,
and
right? A lot of people do experience that.
Sure.
I don't know how well you can prepare, but I think when you finally started getting into retirement, you're not realizing how much it takes. But I read that with the thing that he just started to set his mind on, just, I'm not going to have enough, and I'm not going to have enough, I'm not going to have. Do you think that played a big, huge role in?
Well, again, a lot of these things that happen in our minds, because your mental health is your brain. And when you struggle with an illness called depression or bipolar disorder, anxiety, ADHD, all of these mental illnesses, the brain chemistry is very different. And
it literally changes your
yes.
brain chemistry.
Yeah, and you have to have an understanding that it is a brain illness. And there's nothing wrong with having a brain illness, any illness. You need to be able to go get some help. There are a lot of things that can help the chemistry in our brain, and those are things: eating right, not drinking, not smoking, not doing drugs, exercising, being around people that help us to feel great, meditation, prayer. They've been known, those things can help. But in addition, potentially, maybe having a counselor, maybe talking to someone about these things that are troubling my mind, my thoughts, ruminating about not having enough money to retire, letting people down. I mean, that's what's super sad about this illness, is that a lot of it is going on psychologically.
Right.
And you don't know that unless you ask more questions. Now, what we teach is the important part is to recognize and notice behaviors, both physically and how they're acting, noticing and recognizing those things that are different from that person, and starting a conversation to talk to them about what you've noticed. That can lead to that discussion where out comes these psychological thoughts that are going on.
So what
Beating
does it
yourself up about
Have you
things.
been able to, I know that his story is tragic, and I felt bad for his wife because I've interviewed other people that have dealt with trying to prevent somebody from killing, you know what I'm saying, suicide
Yes.
prevention, or they're the families after. But I didn't realize that one gentleman I interviewed, he said that one suicide touches 100 people.
It sure does.
And can you explain that, why that is, and you have your children have a higher chance of committing suicide if the parent, does that make sense? Because there's
Yes.
something in the story about
It's
the kid's
genetic.
father.
Yes.
So can you share a little bit why that is?
Well, it's also, one is the illness, so potentially that person is at risk themselves for that illness.
Okay.
And also the fact that that's how they saw or they knew that their parent dealt with that illness. Okay?
Okay.
So we have to watch loved ones if we know that there is a relative that died by suicide. We need to be aware that potentially maybe they could struggle with that illness.
Okay. Is that what you do if you hear of somebody that you know of, a parent that might have committed suicide or whatever, about getting the family members help right away, because it's kind of similar to watching your dad become an alcoholic, or your mom. They realize that alcohol is what they soothe their problems with.
Yeah.
And
that's also very genetic.
it
Very
is.
much-
Are some more
yes.
people more susceptible to killing
For some-
themselves?
Well, someone
you were?
definitely, people that, one, the risk factors are the illness, depression, stressful life events in combination with depression, abuse, sexual, physical abuse that may have happened during your childhood, a family member who has died by suicide, a family member who struggles with a mental health disorder, access to a means to take my life, incarceration, exposure to other deaths that are brought about in the media. Okay?
Yeah.
These are all risk factors for suicide. But the biggest one, and that's what we do at the Mental Health Foundation with Be Nice, is we focus on recognizing the biggest risk factor, and that is the illness called depression. And then as I go down the list, if I look at somebody and they have the risk factor, they have been diagnosed with depression,
Okay.
another mental health disorder, they got a lot of stuff going on in their life right now that comes out in conversations with me.
Right.
They have a family member that died by suicide. I need to know, wow, they could be at risk. I potentially might have to ask them if they're thinking about taking their life. And also, one other thing I want to really work on too, and we're all working on this, especially those of us working in the arena of suicide prevention, is trying to eliminate the word committed suicide.
Why?
So committed really has a negative reaction, and it really is associated with committing a sin, committing adultery, committing a crime. This person lost their life to an illness. And when you have conversations, we use the terms death by suicide, died by suicide, lost their life to an illness. It's more comforting to loved ones and relatives, and that's why we need to talk about death by suicide, because we want people to be more comfortable to talk about it if they're having thoughts of suicide.
Right. Well, like I said, bringing it to the dinner table, and it's really it still has a huge stigma, and the word mental. I know you say mental health, but most people say mental illness.
Well, there
And
is
a lot
mental
of,
illness.
you know,
because-
there's mental illness to the point where nobody wants to be diagnosed that you have a mental illness.
But that is the stigma.
Yes.
Because all we want to do is say, oh, do you have mental health? Okay, that's ridiculous. We all have mental health, people.
Right.
Everybody has mental health. This morning, we all used our mental health. When I got up this morning, I either got up feeling really good, my mind, not my body. I'm talking, I feel good today. I'm going to take a shower. I'm going to go down, I'm going to make breakfast for myself. I'm going to make sure that I say good morning to my husband. When he leaves for work today, I'm going to give him a kiss. That's using my mental health. That's really simple way to look at it, right?
Right.
Those are, I'm going to go to work, right? I'm carrying out my daily activities that I do every day. Shower, breakfast, say goodbye, hello, whatever. Get in my car. And then my relationships. Now, if I look at 2 weeks or longer, I'm not getting out of bed. I'm not taking a shower. I'm not eating in the morning. I'm not going to say goodbye to my husband. I scream and yell at him when he's walking out the door. That could be the onset. And when I see someone and I notice the changes in their typical behavior for 2 weeks or longer, we teach the plan to go to the next step, and that is having an open conversation with someone.
Yeah, I saw one of them that you know, in here that you had a conversation with somebody that you recognized was having, and it actually, they received that information rather well. I don't know if everyone would be in that, you know what I'm saying?
You just got to try it.
What is it?
And,
so what does that look like? You got people that are working with people at work that might, you know, tell them some of the warning. They may not notice that you might be losing weight and they think it's great. Like, oh, you look really great, you know, and we get compliments, right? Or maybe you put on a few pounds, you don't want to say anything, you know, because everybody's life changes in seasons.
Right.
But what else are you should be looking at, like when you're
I'm looking at the other behaviors. I mean, other than that, are they happy when they're coming to work that they've got this weight lost? Or is it that they're not getting their job done? They're not able to concentrate. They're angry sometimes. They're calling in sick more often. And then add in losing weight, gaining weight. Putting those pieces together, potentially even thinking about if they have some risk factors, more stress in their life, the loss of a loved one, the moving away of a family member in the military, children that are having behavioral issues, loss of a child, could be a miscarriage. So then I start to look at maybe there are some risk factors. God, I know she lost her mom about a month and a half ago. I wonder if everything's okay.
Right.
Then I move on to have a conversation. And that is where we teach. You have knowledge, and with the action plan, and I'm really big about this because it's simple, you move to the next step in the action plan, and that's where you have the confidence because I have the knowledge. Gosh, I learned about these signs and symptoms. I learned about risk factors. I'm going to go ask that question. So I'm going to move to the next step, and I'm going to let you know. Gosh, lately I've noticed you're not concentrating it much. You come to work and, you know, usually you would make the coffee every day and you aren't making it recently. What's going on? Is everything okay? How easy was that? Because I have the knowledge, I've seen these things, and I know what they typically are like. I've noticed, I know Pamela, I know what she's like every time I see her at a meeting. And she's different today.
Yeah.
I'm going to take 5 minutes and I'm going to walk up and I'm going to ask her, hey, I have noticed these things. And also, I think in our lives, you know, we become reluctant to even notice the good and the right about people. And if I make it a point every day to notice the good, the right in people, then I'm even going to be more stronger in having the knowledge to be able to know the difference that I noticed in that person.
How will you notice now that you've been part of organizations, businesses now? I know you were, you know, the schools. How are businesses handling? Because they probably are experiencing people with mental health issues that they don't want to lose them.
There you go. Yeah.
I mean, what are they looking for from you to help?
Oh, it's been amazing, and I want to make sure that the viewers today, if they do own a business, do connect with us and think about bringing the program into your business. BeNice.org. Anyway, what they're doing is, yes, they are recognizing and finding that there are many more mental health challenges now. One big one was coming back to work.
Right.
In a different way of working. For those that were working throughout the pandemic, they were already fighting the big fight to keep businesses going, to keep going to work, right? We know it. So now here we are, the after effect. I'm dealing with going back to work in a different way. The political climate having an effect on my mental health, right?
Saying the right thing.
Right.
And, you know, you talk a little bit, you talk about talking about your issues, you know what I'm saying? Getting help. Maybe you need to have somebody separate from the family, the whole unit. And I agree with that are emotionally involved. Because I think today that many people are afraid to express what they're feeling. They may see something that they don't agree with and they're afraid to say it out loud. It's like, even though they're like, okay, I don't want to be pushed away from the group, or I don't want to be labeled something. But I don't think this is the right way to go down the road to fix whatever issues that might be happening. Let's say our country, our organization, whatever. And they're afraid to talk. What is that going to do on our mental health? What do you think?
And that's where, you know, beginning to have that knowledge base, that being able to talk openly about anxiety disorder, which can be very crippling. Heard the stat that 1 in 3 adults will struggle or is struggling with anxiety right now in the world today.
I believe there is a lot.
So I think not just talking about anxiety, but talking about when it becomes an illness. Okay, that's the big thing, because we can talk about it. Yeah, I've got some anxiety going on. I am struggling right now to make sure that we can keep things afloat. You know, the negativeness on the news right now can cause anxiety just in general, right?
I know.
Every story this morning on the morning show I was watching was horrifying. And if I can keep it into perspective, and maybe that day talk out some feelings with coworkers, whatever, try to bring humor into the situation sometimes also, but recognizing amongst my coworkers, wow, is all this stuff negatively really causing stress onto their mental health that has brought about changes in, remember, thoughts, actions, feelings, has brought about a change in going to work, carrying out daily activities, engaging in satisfying relationships. So for the viewers, write those 3 things down, because if those things have marked changes, then I need to move the next step in the action plan, invite myself to start a conversation.
Well, and I will tell people that, I mean, I have a lot of, I do have a lot of friends. It's not to brag, but I do have a lot of friends in the community.
Sure.
Whatever. I think your friend, it's really important to have friends. And I think even male or female, right? I mean, for a male, he needs to have his friends. Female, we have no problem, you know, sitting there chatting at church, and you know what I'm saying, in our activities and stuff like that. But I think males too, I think it's really vital that they have friends, that they go, do you share that with your people? It's the importance of friends.
So when we go into companies, we're bringing this action plan, Be Nice, into their work culture. So part of the program is that macro sense of treat people with respect and dignity. Know that how you treat an individual has an effect on how they think, act, and feel. Knowing that the relationships that I have at work, how I treat individuals, all of us treat each other, helps in productivity, helps in retention, helps in attitude, right? Those things are all affected, and those are those ROIs that every employer wants. So those are important.
How to deal with different people. You
got it.
And know that they're just different. They may have, you might be on the same team, they just have a different perspective. All right, we're going to talk about this book, but I wanted to get through the first part of this on adult mental illness, mental health, how we can help adults. And then we're going to be getting right into the book and talking about how you can, you know, teenagers today. I've got to admit, social media is just, we didn't grow up with that. And I do believe that. But that was going to be our part 2. But as you're looking in the camera, Christy, what else would you like to wrap up on adult mental health and how they can reach you to get more information?
Sure. I encourage everyone to go onto our website and take the pledge. It doesn't mean giving money. It means clicking on 12 minutes, listen to the action plan that I did refer to many times in this first part of the interview. So that's at benice.org.
Right, be nice and okay. All right, I want to thank Christy Buck for being here today.
Thank you so much.
And we're going to do part 2 interview, and we're going to be talking about preventive suicides, what teenagers are dealing with today, and how the Be Nice program can help you in your schools and to bring mental health to, I guess, the cafeteria, to the classroom, and so people are more comfortable recognizing it with their friends. Thank you so much, Christy.
Thanks, Pam.
So this is Pamela Keim from GRTV Media. We will catch you next week on part 2 with Christy Buck. Take care, everyone.
The opinions expressed in the preceding program are those of the producer and not necessarily those of WKTV Community Media.